Hello, everyone. Welcome to BookTrib Live, a Miramax Media production. Today, we are thrilled to be chatting with New York Times bestselling author and author of the insanely popular Whiskey Creek series, Brenda Novak, in her newly released The Secret Sister, which just came out this week. Brenda has generously offered to give away a number of copies for her novel, The Secret Sister. So make sure after the chat to head over to booktrib.com and you can enter to win. Welcome, Brenda. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I always like to talk about books.
Oh, good. Well, we love to talk about it too, so that's perfect. Can you tell everyone about The Secret Sister and some of the characters?
Yeah, this is a brand new series for me. We don't know how long it'll be. It'll be at least a trilogy. Just came out on Tuesday, and the idea behind it was I was watching a Dateline one night, and there was a man and a woman as adults who were sitting there talking about their childhood, and they had these vague memories of this sister or some other child they played with, and they weren't sure who she was because their mother, had always claimed there was no other sibling. So this started them on a quest to find out who this child was. And although my book doesn't go the exact same way as that Dateline does, it's very different. That was the germ of the idea, and it really agitated my imagination, got me excited to write about, what would that be like to have these dim memories and be certain there was this other child and yet have everybody else in your family deny it, your mother. And so it was a fun sort of mystery to explore.
That's fantastic. Was it really different for you outside of what you normally are writing romance-wise? What was in the process for you that was different about it?
It really wasn't too different. It is probably a little bit more women's fiction-y than some of my other work, certainly Whiskey Creek. But I've done a lot of suspense as well. I just sold a new suspense series to St. Martin's that'll be, more thriller-ish and have more suspense. This is more of a mystery, romantic mystery elements that run through it. So it wasn't, a wild divergence, but it is just a little different. It's not quite as sweet and just containing a romance like Whiskey Creek, and it's not as
Right.
hard-hitting in the suspense thriller, so kind of right down the middle lane.
Fantastic. Now, there really is quite an interesting story to your background and what prompted you to become an author. Do you mind kind of talking about that for the viewers?
No, no, not at all. I actually never dreamed I'd be a writer. I know that's an unusual thing. Usually you hear authors talk and they've been writing stories since they were little. That definitely wasn't me. I did well in English, but I thought I was, math and science were my better subjects. I thought I was left brain, not creative. So I went out in business and I was working as a loan officer when I caught my daycare provider drugging my children with cough syrup and Tylenol to get them to sleep all day so that she could watch soap operas. And then they'd wake up at night, ready to play when I was exhausted after a long day at work, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on until I found the medicine in my baby's bottle. And then everything just sort of, something I never dreamed she would do sort of became a reality. And I was like, oh my gosh, this has been going on probably for a couple of months at least, maybe longer. And so I felt sick. I mean, my baby was only about 6 months old. I had a 2-year-old. I had a little 5-year-old girl. And to think that they'd been getting this stuff was, upsetting to me because I didn't give them anything like that unless they were truly ill. She thought, I think, because it was over the counter that it would be okay, which is the whole crazy thing about it, is that she did love the children. I think she just thought it was an easy way to get through the day. So, of course, I couldn't trust anyone with the care of my children after that. So I decided that I would quit my job and stay home with them myself. But I had to make a living somehow. So I was trying to find something that I could do with 3 little kids. I have 5 now. And everything I came across was going to be pretty difficult with packing them along. And then I was reading a good book that my sister sent me. It was Jude Devereux's Knight in Shining Armor. And it was captivating, and I was having so much fun with it. And then as I closed it, I remember thinking, I wonder if I could do this. Like, this is something you can do from home when the kids are napping or whatever. And I started the next day and never looked back.
Amazing. What an amazing story. It was difficult though, as you said, because it wasn't in your wheelhouse and writing wasn't what you did. How did you overcome that and kind of find a way to just put pen to paper?
Well, I'm one of those learners that I learn most easily by example, and there are plenty of examples of stories out there. So I did a lot of reading. The books that inspired me that I read growing up, I did love to read, and I loved the classics. Jane Eyre was like one of my favorites. So was Gone with the Wind, and so I just kind of remembered that magic and tried to incorporate it in some of my own work. And it took me about 5 years. It wasn't the easy fix, that I'd hoped it would be. I knew nothing about writing and how difficult it would be to get published. So that's the funny thing is maybe if I knew how high the odds were stacked against me, I might have chosen something else. But, sometimes ignorance is bliss. So I just launched out, and trial and error is another thing that I learn best from. So I just sat my butt in the chair and I started trying, and I started researching this is before the internet even had all the fabulous resources that it has now. So I would have to wait for my husband to get home, shove the kids at him at like 8 o'clock because he was working night and day trying to save his business. We were in a really bad financial situation. And so I would shove the kids at him, dash off to Sac State, and then I'd spend every nickel, dime, quarter we had trying to make copies at the copy machine to be able to get enough material to work the next day. So you're right, it wasn't easy, but it was a passion. It became a passion. And I remember when I'd lay down at night, even if it had been hard and we were worried about making the house payment and his business and everything that was going wrong, I would think, but my book is good. I really like my book. I believe in this. And so it was the silver lining to the dark time.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you mentioned, how difficult it was to get into the publishing world. And I wonder for you, do you ever think about, the past few years has really been full of self-publishing. Do you ever wonder if you had started now, if it would have been a different, maybe more difficult or easier process?
Wow, I think that's a double-edged sword. I think indie pubbing is a double-edged sword. It's easier in many ways because there is no bar to entry. Nobody can tell you that they don't like your story, so you won't have the opportunity. You can put it up fairly easily. You can find support people who can format and do covers, and it's all so readily accessible and easy and wonderful. But it's also harder. Anytime you get a market that's as crowded as ours, standing out and actually selling a number of books becomes more and more difficult. It's simple economics, right? So we have more books, more material than ever before, more authors jumping in. So readers, I think, are just absolutely inundated with buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And so I think they get a little anesthetized to it, and they're like going, whoa, like I'm going to stick with just my favorites. Or, it's creating an industry that is hugely different than anything we've known before. So I'm kind of curious to see where it's all going to lead, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. And I'm sure having, the background you have and the history that you've had at this point with so many novels must, make you feel easier about all of that whole new world as well.
It does, because now the new world has made all that backlist evergreen. So before, it didn't, I wouldn't say it didn't matter, but it wasn't readily available, so people couldn't get to those books very easily. So it was all about the new release, all about the new release. And now people, it's fun to hear from people on my Facebook that'll say, oh my gosh, I've read every single book you've written, and I've written 50. And I don't know, previously that would have been so difficult. They would have had to watch me very carefully every release, rush out and buy it when it's new. And now they can just glom on to whatever series they like of mine and go through, read the whole thing, shift to a different series. So in that way, I think the new indie world, or digital world, I should say, is a real blessing to traditionally published authors as well, because we have all of that backlist that becomes readily available to our readership.
Right. Very interesting. Do you have any couple of, maybe simple pieces of advice for people who are thinking, maybe I could do this, but, I don't write. I don't know how I would do that. Do you have any kind of quick, things where they could start?
Well, I really feel as if they should join a good writers organization. I didn't know about Romance Writers of America until I finished my first manuscript after that first 5 years. I was pregnant with my fifth child when I showed up it was either Houston or I think it was Houston, RWA, and that was back in 1996. And I didn't know a soul. I didn't know they had local chapters, but I felt like I had plugged into the motherload of information that I had been missing for 5 years. And had I been part of that group, I would have had marketing tips, craft classes. They have a periodical that's very helpful, contests to help set you apart. They really give you all the keys, all the things you need, and a framework with which to build. And so I have been really grateful to RWA since I found them, because I finaled in the Golden Heart that next year, found my agent because of that, who sold me to HarperCollins. It just kind of all opened up everything that I was missing on the marketing side that I didn't know about and didn't know how to find. And so my first piece of, advice would be definitely whatever you write, if it's mysteries or romance or whatever, find a group of like-minded individuals and join a really great writers group, because that, even just the networking and stuff can be hugely
Absolutely.
beneficial.
Yes.
So I think that's really key.
Okay. Now, The Secret Sister, the cover is pretty different from most of your other series and novels that you've come out with. Were you aiming for that? Was it something you really wanted to kind of set apart?
Yeah, I think that my publisher is the one that came up with that cover, and I definitely like it. I think what they were going for, because this is my first trade paperback, nowadays that's kind of lost some of its meaning, because the indie pub books that get printed on demand through Create Space at Amazon are in trade paper, so it doesn't have the same significance it once had. But it's my first traditionally published trade paper, and so they wanted to do something to set it apart, to let people know why, this is a little bit different than her usual work. So they were aiming for kind of a big book feel, and I think that that's why they chose what they did. And I love the hint of sort of mystery that runs through, kind of a gothic feel to the cover in a way, which I love gothics, obviously, with Jane Eyre being my favorite. So I really liked the cover when they showed it to me.
Fantastic. Now, you and your husband have a pretty big family, as you mentioned. You have 5 kids. How do you find the time to write all of these books?
It wasn't easy. I mean, I remember juggling for all I was worth, and I'm not a good juggler. I'm one of those people that when I sit down to do a task, it's frustrating me to have to break away. But thankfully, I loved them enough that they were worth it. Anything they needed always came first. I've always had an open door policy where they could come in, interrupt at any time, because they were my first priority. Now, I'm an empty nester. My youngest moved out a year ago, went to college, and so I've just sunk into working too much, I think, because I haven't had that pull to help me keep that balance. So I'm working to get back where I should be. But it's also been, easier than it's ever been the past year, because what I have done, I've been able to do guilt-free. Because when you're a mother, even if you're doing everything you can to be a good mother, when you take time away from your kids, you always feel guilty, as if there's something you should be doing. And when I was with my kids, I felt like I should be writing. When I was doing my writing, I felt like I should be with my kids. So I had that constant tug of war that so many women face that are working. And so it was a bit of a relief when that ended. But at the same time, I really miss all those little kids. They were wonderful. I mean, I would not change anything.
Oh, that's fantastic. Did you find that you had a place to go where maybe your best writing came out, or somewhere that was just yours, where you could just go and write and maybe not be interrupted if you were on deadline or something like that?
No, except there was a couple times when I decided that in order to meet my deadline, I'd have to leave for 3 or 4 days, and that happened maybe 4 times. And I remember one time I did, and we didn't have a lot of money back in the beginning, and so I did this search to get this inexpensive hotel room, and you know how they don't tell you exactly what hotel room it is until you book it, and so it turned out it was the Hyatt Regency downtown Sacramento. And so my husband takes me down there, and I'll never forget the doorman watching us go back and forth with a cooler of food, with my exercise bike, we were hauling all this in because I don't leave my hotel room. You know what I mean? I knew I was just going to go in there until I was done. So they probably thought they had this really weird lady, despite the fact that I live locally, moving into their hotel. So yeah, it was funny.
Charity work is something that is very close to your heart, and specifically the Diabetes Foundation. Can you tell everyone kind of why that is, and what you've done at this point for the research?
You bet. Not long after I was published, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. He was 5 at the time. He's the one that's now 18 and in college. And it was a rude awakening. You hear about diabetes so much that it feels common. It feels less dangerous because it's so common. And then as a mother, you're told all the terrible things that could very likely happen to your child, and over time this disease breaks down your heart, your kidneys, your everything. It affects everything, your skin, every organ in your body. And I just didn't want my child to have to face that, as any mother wouldn't. And so I decided I wanted to fight back somehow. And I didn't know how, though. It took me a couple of years where I just racked my brain constantly. What could I do? What could I do? I didn't have a lot of resources, not a lot of time, obviously, with 5 kids and a new writing career. And I didn't have, I had less money than time even. And so I didn't know what to do, but I was searching, and I went to a silent auction for his school. And I remember thinking at that time, because it wasn't that well supported, even though they'd done a great job. And I remember thinking, there's got to be an easier way than trying to get everybody to come out at the same time and feed them. Like that's the hard thing, getting them all to leave their homes and come to one place for a certain amount of time. And then to try and feed everybody is hugely expensive and difficult. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if I tried this online, which now doesn't sound like anything brilliant because everybody does everything online. But this is back, 11, 12 years ago when it was somewhat new. eBay was just sort of coming out and hitting its stride. And so I thought, I wonder if I could, ask the people that were already coming to my website if they would join with me in trying to, fight back and make a difference. So Brenda Novak's online auction for diabetes research was born in 2005. And I ran that for 10 solid years, and we raised almost $2.5 million. And now my fundraising has shifted a little bit. The auction the pricing for things started going a little soft, even though we had more supporters than ever. So it kind of told me that maybe it had seen its better days, and I wanted to switch into something new. And as you mentioned, we have this whole new digital revolution. So I thought, what if I did a box set of digital books from big name authors, and the proceeds went entirely to research. So I started that last year. Yeah, it really worked out well. I started that last year. It was only available for a month. It made $100,000, and I ran it in conjunction with the auction. So this year I shifted and just did the box sets, and we raised 120 this year.
Wow, that's fantastic. Are you already thinking about maybe doing the same thing next year since it was do you think that far ahead since it was so popular?
Yeah, I would definitely like to do 2 box sets next year, one in May and one in November to celebrate Diabetes Month. So I think I want to split them up. I've always just done something in May in honor of Mother's Day, since that's the reason I'm doing it. But November is Diabetes Month, and so I think maybe it'll be fun to break up and do a box set for each May and November.
Right, fantastic. So on your website, you have a Woody Allen quote that I thought was very interesting, and it reads, "If you're not failing every now and again, it's a sign you're not doing anything very innovative." I was wondering if, because you have so many books and it's one right after the other, do you still ever get a twinge of like, ooh, I don't know, this one might not do as well as the last, or does that failing ever happen in the pit of your stomach anymore?
Definitely. I think, I don't know, I can't talk for everybody, but a creative person is pretty sensitive. And so you're always afraid when you finish that book, but maybe this is the book that's going to end your career. Maybe people won't get it. They won't understand it. They won't connect with it. And especially when I'm working on is the one I, of course, always doubt the worst. I think it's terrible. It's never going to work. And then there's a few, magic books where you just kind of know they're special as you write them. This Heart of Mine was like that for me. Maybe because the character in the book was built on Thad, my youngest son, and I really connected with it as a person myself. And my readers have really embraced that book probably as one of their favorites too. So every once in a while you get lucky. That one was easy to write, but then The Secret Sister wasn't that easy to write, and my readers seem to really be loving it. The reviews have been good. So I think everybody holds their breath and hopes, okay, I've given it my best shot. Let's see what people think.
Fantastic. Now, tomorrow you will be at the Secret Sister launch party, which is very exciting, and that's taking place in San Francisco, if that's correct.
Sacramento.
Sacramento. For anyone out there in the area, is that an open invitation to people? Are there tickets? What can you tell people in the area about it? Absolutely.
It's open. It's even been advertised in the Sacramento Bee, so I mean it's open to the public, and it's at Barnes & Noble at Arden Fair Mall, which is a great central location. We're going to have a blast. I've got a fun prize wheel game that we'll play, and some fun treats, and everybody who comes, while supplies last, will get a fun welcome goodie bag. And I'm just looking forward to meeting everybody, getting out from behind my computer and writing all the time, and celebrating something fun.
After that, are there any other dates down the road where maybe you'll be touring, where other people can come out and see you?
I don't have anything planned now. All my dates are kind of behind me. I did the California State Fair. I spent several days there this year, and I do every year. I love that. That's where I meet local people and sort of build my local list, and a lot of those will be coming to the party. I did, RWA in New York. I did Thriller Fest in New York. I'll be going to Tucson, I guess, in September, so there is that. But
Okay.
I don't have as many physical events coming up as I just came through.
Okay. I feel like we should also mention that on your website, it says that if you purchase This Heart of Mine or The Secret Sister, you can send your receipt in an email actually, and you get automatically put in as a club member, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I have a fan club on my site that just it's a password protected section where those that are my most loyal readers can join, and they get to enter, exclusive giveaways and get extra content. And if ever I have a freebie, they're gonna be the ones that get it. So that kind of thing. It just makes kind of a place where they can get some extra stuff.
Fantastic. Now, you also have, even though this just released, The Secret Sister just came out, you have two more down the pike already in the next couple of months. Hanover House, which I think is a new series, if I'm right, and
Yep, that's
another
a
Whiskey Creek
prequel.
novel, which just couldn't be more exciting. So, can you maybe give us a little synopsis of each?
Yeah, Hanover House I'm very excited about it because it kicks off the suspense series I just sold to St. Martin's. Whiteout book one will be out
Okay.
next September. And Hanover House is a novella, but it's a big novella. It's like half a book. It's almost 200 pages. And it introduces everyone to Evelyn Talbot, who is a psychiatrist who studies serial killers. And she's convinced the government to create Hanover House, which is this mental health / prison facility in remote Alaska, where they send her basically the worst of the worst, and she tries to unlock the mysteries of why psychopaths don't have a conscience. Is it genetics that causes it? Is it environment? What is it? So she goes through all these very interesting, and the research for it has been really interesting. So I love that series and writing that series, and so it'll be fun to see what people think of the start of that. And then we have A Winter Wedding, which is Kyle's story. I've had a lot of people writing me for
Okay.
Kyle's story because he figured in so heavily to This Heart of Mine, the last book. And he
Okay.
also was part of the novella that kicked off the series. And a lot of people weren't sure they liked him in that book because he was sort of the bad guy. And
Okay.
then you get to see a different side of him and why and how much he regrets his mistakes and how it all happened. And you get to be more understanding and want him to have his happy ever after. And so I've got a good girl picked out for him.
Very nice. Now, do you find that because the Whiskey Creek series is such an expanding series, do the ideas come to you organically? Is it something that after a while you really have to sit down and be like, oh, now what am I going to do with this character?
Yeah, I think I'm at that point now. In the beginning, when we decided to do the series, I had like so much inventory. I remember telling my husband, I've never had so much book inventory, meaning in my head, these ideas that I already knew what
Right.
I wanted to write. And that seemed like it would last forever because there was like 10 of them. And then now I'm out, and I'm thinking, I think I need to go back and get some more inventory where I just spend a few days brainstorming and thinking and looking for things that really incite my imagination so that I can finish the series as strongly as I feel like it's been built so far.
Has there ever been fan input that maybe put you in the direction you just didn't know where you wanted to go with that character, and then you happen to read something maybe on a chat or on your Facebook, and you said, "Oh, you know what? That is kind of a good idea. I might be able to do something with that."
No, but I've sort of experienced the opposite, where they'll say, like, oh, I would love to see Stacy get her happily ever after. And I'm like, Stacy is the most
Nope.
shallow individual in the world. Like, I could not redeem her because she just
Right.
has no idea of what's truly worth it in life. Like, she's super materialistic and she's super immature. And I can't change her that drastically because she's been
Okay.
so consistent throughout the books in revealing that immaturity and that shallowness. So I
Right.
kind of chuckled when I got that one, and I thought, really, like Stacy, you think I can redeem her? Because I do love to redeem characters. Like I love showing a different perspective on something and how somebody can look really terrible in one situation, and when you really understand the driving force behind what made them behave that way, or how they
Right.
were raised, or something that really impacted them, they can become a really wonderful hero, and it just gives them some complexity and some layers. So
Ooh.
I do love to redeem people, and maybe that's why she sent that to me, thinking, "Okay, you redeem so many people. Here,
Right.
try with Stacey."
Right.
I'm thinking, I think my fans would rise up in revolt because they dislike her so much. Like, they're not willing to let her change out of what she is because she's done so much damage to so many other characters.
So interesting. With the little time we have left, we're going to take a couple of viewer questions. So let's see. Suzanne says, do you think that your writing process has evolved since you first started writing?
That's really a good question because I feel like sometimes I'll look back at the old books and I think I was better then, which is kind of a weird thing because you're thinking, no, you should get better and better and better. And then in
Right.
other ways, I think, no, I'm getting it better now. So I think it just really depends. That's a hard question for me. I do always constantly try and evaluate. Am I getting better? I think it's getting easier to a certain extent. Every new book is still very difficult, but certain things that were hard in the beginning, the mechanics even were hard in the beginning, like, trying to figure out how to do transitions, trying to figure out how to do cliffhangers,
Hmm.
trying to figure out about how much material to put on the table to equal 400-page book. That kind of stuff becomes kind of innate and second nature. So at least you're able to sort of put away some of the stuff you were worried about before. But as far as trying to make each new book as riveting as possible, it's always a brand new challenge, and you're always trying to scale that mountain all over again. So hopefully I'm evolving. You'll have to tell me.
Carly is asking, from romance to suspense to historical, do you have a favorite genre? Maybe which one is it?
Oh, that's a tough question too. I think because I'm an eclectic reader and I love so many different things.
Mhm.
And you know how you get tired of things sometimes, like sometimes romance can seem to me not unrealistic because I really believe in love and that happy ever after. But it just doesn't seem meaty maybe enough. Like I really want some suspense, something darker elements, more drama. And so that's when I really get in the mood
Okay.
for a good suspense novel. And I love the puzzle of it. And it's a little more difficult to write because you have those equally difficult, well, you got the romance arc and you got the suspense arc, and you've got to please your reader in both ways and make it very satisfying. So weaving that together can be a challenge, and they typically end up good for a big challenge, then suspense. If I want something that just carries me away emotionally, then I go for the romance. And I don't know if my love for historicals, it probably stemmed from Jane Eyre. The research alone I find just really interesting. The last historical I did was A Matter of Grave Concern, and it was about resurrectionists, that literally would dig bodies out of the ground, steal them for their bodies, not any valuable possessions, and then sell them to medical colleges for dissection. And they made so much money that they started killing people in order to sell their body to make money. So, I mean, never in history have we had anything else that quite like that.
Right, right.
So I just loved research, and it made for a fun backdrop, even for a romance novel, because you could have these kind of dark, nefarious elements going on and add the danger, but then have the love story developing. So I don't know. I love them all probably equally. Depends on what mood I'm in.
Now, probably for our final question today, Sandra would like to know, who would you say has been your most influential in your writing career?
I would probably have to say my editor, Paula, because we've done 50 books together. When I first started and I was uncertain of my own talent, and I think everybody, when they first start writing, they're kind of putting it out there looking like, am I any good? You guys going to like it? And she would have had the power to sort of crush me at that time when I made a mistake. I remember in an early book, I had a subplot that was sort of opposing the real plot. I knew something was wrong with it, but I wasn't experienced enough to be able to understand what it was and fix it on my own. And I remember her meeting with me at a conference and saying, this subplot's just too strong. It's taking over your story. You need to take that out. And because of that, that's what started my first series. I took that subplot out, and it became book 2.
Right.
And then it took off, into the Dundee series. And I remember looking back at that, had she been like, oh my gosh, like, what's wrong with you? This is just horrible.
Right.
I don't know that I would have been able to have the resilient spirit of like, oh, I got this, I can do it. So I'm grateful to her because she's really good about the way she gives critical input. She's conscious of the fact that creative individuals are sensitive and that can sting. And I mean, she's not so gentle she doesn't say it. She's very honest, but she's kind in the way she does it. And I think I've learned a lot from her. I think she's guided me at tricky areas where to take the story to deeper levels instead of settling for surfacey things. I think she's been a good influence there. So yeah, I would have to say Paula Eichelhoff, my editor.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. We have sadly come to the end of our live chat, Brenda. Thank you so very much for being with us. And I just want to remind everyone that we are giving away copies of The Secret Sister by Brenda Novak. And you can head on over to booktrib.com to enter to win any of those copies. Thank you so much, Brenda. We are so happy that you're able to be here with us today.
Thank you, Beth. It was really fun to get to chat with you.
Absolutely. And you have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.